God bless you. Thank you for tuning in on this evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Loosing the Cords That Bind. My name is Dr. Eleanor Thompson. I am the CEO of Loosing the Cords That Bind, LLC, a for-profit business. Thank you for joining me on tonight. I would like to honor God for this time and season. I thank Him for this platform that He has allotted me in this season right here. I thank Pastor Paul Frampton and Lady Michelle Frampton, Paul, owners of Truelife Radio. I am your host on tonight. I will be sharing some information that you may not need now, but later on, I'm pretty sure you will meet someone, and then you can be able to share the information that you have received on tonight. If you don't know what Loosing the Cords That Bind is, Loosing the Cords That Bind is a for-profit organization. It was established in 2018, and our mission is to promote wellness and safety to all those that women who are in domestic violence situations and relationships. That abuse could be verbal, emotional, sexual, financial, physical, spiritual. Through various sources, clients are empowered, are encouraged, and educated. Loosen the Cord That Bind was birthed out of the pain of being a victim of and becoming a survivor of domestic violence, and desire to help others so to get them out of this dark place. We're here for the community so that they can be able to navigate and to help others to transition to this difficult time. And even we're also here to educate the churches as well as the community and to become one so that we can be able to be more effective to the community as well as those that we are helping. Now, before I get started, I would like to give out some numbers. The domestic violence number is 1-800-621-4673. That's 1-800-621-4673. Safe Horizon is 1-855-234-1042. That's 855-234-1042. And if you're outside of New York City, the number is 1-855-484-2846. That's outside of New York City, 1-855-484-2846. Now, if there are ways to contact me, if you want to get in touch with me, my phone number is 1-800-454-4639. That's 1-800-454-4639. The email address you can reach me at is loosenthecords@loosenthecords.bind.com. That's loosenthecords@loosenthecords.bind.com. The website is loosenthecords.bind.com. Please know that domestic violence is never okay, and it's a crime punishable by law. So you do not have to stay in the state that you're in. There is a way out, and there is hope. Now, tonight, I want us to focus in on emotional abuse, because I spoke of it last week, but before I unpack a little bit, I want to reiterate that in the previous segment, we learned that emotional, mental, and psychological abuse is one of the hardest forms of abuse to recognize. Why? Because it can be subtle, indirect, faint, quiet, deceptive, dangerous, or sometimes it's visible, obvious, and manipulative. Remember that emotional abuse is no less harmful than physical abuse. They both have the same ramifications, consequences, and results. When emotional abuse is severe and ongoing, a victim may lose their entire self without a single mark or bruise. Instead, their wounds are invisible to others, hidden in self-doubt and worthlessness. This is how they feel, worthless and just helpless. That's how the victims feel. So tonight we're going to deal with uh, the behaviors that causes that strains from emotional abuse, and one of them, one is trauma, and the others are triggers. So we're going to deal with some trauma. We're going to deal with trauma, and then we're going to go to the triggers. Okay, you may ask, what is trauma? According to the dictionary.com, I think it is the response to a deeply or disturbing event that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, causes feelings of helplessness, diminishes their sense of self, and their ability to feel the full range of emotions and experiences. It doesn't discriminate. It's just like the domestic violence is part of it. It doesn't discriminate all across the board, all cultures, to everything, and into graven and woven into the fabric of the community. It's right there. Sometimes we turn our head and we want to see it, but it's right there. And if we look close enough, we can really see it. Now we're going to go, what is emotional and psychological trauma? Emotional and psychological trauma is the result of extraordinary stressful events that shatter your sense of security, making you feel helpless, like I said before. And if you would consider the world a dangerous world, it is a dangerous world, but more so when you have dealt with trauma, it's more so evident. And psychological trauma can leave you struggling with upsetting emotions, memories, and anxieties that would not go away. It can also leave you feeling numb, disconnected, and unable to trust other people. Sometimes you just feel like you can't trust anyone because you don't want to deal with that event again, because that event is the thing that causes the trauma. That event could be anything, and people have different events. Because whatever might be traumatizing to you is not traumatizing to me or to someone else. Traumatic experience often involves a threat to life or safety. Whatever the situation, it leaves you feeling overwhelmed and isolated. And that can result also in trauma if it's not taken care of and it doesn't involve physical harm. The more frightened and helpless you feel, you're the most likely to be traumatized. If you feel that that certain event left you traumatized and you feel helpless and horrified by it, then you were traumatized. Trauma, the things that can cause trauma. Trauma can be caused by overwhelming negative events that cause a lasting impact on the victim's mental and emotional stability. While numerous sources of trauma are physically violent in nature, others are psychological because you can't see it. A lot of people if you really take a note and just watch people walk around, you see people walk around sometimes like they're walking around in a fog. They don't know what's going on. They're walking into the street, they're walking in front of cars, not even paying attention to what they're doing because their minds is altogether totally somewhere else. Some common sources of trauma may include rape, domestic violence, the ongoing relentless stress of it all. Like even in the pandemic, some people, like I said, haven't gone back to work or whatever the case would be. They're still home with their abusers or whatever, and they're still going through stressful situations. They may not be physically getting hit, but the emotions of it, their emotions are running very high. And sometimes if they're not strong, they will eventually break under pressure because their mind will go into totally overdrive and just shut everything down. And then, again, you have natural disasters, which also can cause traumas like storms, tsunamis, different things of that such, flooding, different things, natural disasters, volcanic reactions. Thank God we didn't have earthquakes, all those. Then you have severe illnesses such as cancer and different things like that will really traumatize people. That to the point that especially even if not the person, the loved one, or those who are close to them, they still feel that trauma because they are involved. Or injury. Someone might get an injury, but injured to the fact that they used to be full of life. Now they can't even. They're incapacitated. They can't walk or whatever. They can't do anything for themselves. So that's traumatic as well. And sometimes we say that some of them they act mean. Sometimes they'll say things, but too that's from all that place of hurt where they're experiencing that trauma. And sometimes we are so quick to make a judgment, but sometimes we just need to just be settled and just look and just not be able to speak so fast, but just be discernful. Another thing that's very traumatizing is the death of a loved one. That's self-explanatory. You don't even have to go there because death is definitely a traumatic experience for everyone, I believe. A death of a parent or a sibling or whatever else is traumatizing. Even a pet is very traumatizing. And also another traumatic thing is witnessing or an act of violence, plane crashing, horrific images. Just like the event that happened with the World Trade Center. It's an act of witnessing an act of violence. We weren't necessarily by the building, but on television and different social media platforms, we saw the burning building. We saw how the plane made an impact into the building and the buildings crumbled. That image, I'm pretty sure, like I said, 911, you will never forget. The date you will never forget. The images that are in our heads. Still, even if someone go down where the buildings were, even though they erected new buildings, but those things are just like embedded in our mental minds that we will never forget those things because they were so traumatic. And even on the day that it happened, sometimes it's just so solemn. It's just like a sadness everywhere. Okay, it is possible to sustain trauma after witnessing something from a distance, like I just said. Young children are, again, they're vulnerable, especially to trauma, and should be psychologically examined after a traumatic event has occurred to ensure their emotional well-being. Sometimes we just take that, okay, kids, they'll get over it, but sometimes what you think they're not traumatized, then will. You know, they're getting bullied at school. That's why we always have to be up on where when it comes to our children in school or wherever they are going at, because you want to know what's going on with them. You have to be, because you have to be accountable for them as well. And even learning a low grade, and if you're not giving them that encouragement, sometimes that becomes traumatic as well. So all these little things we have to really pay attention to. At sometimes here we have like emotional symptoms of trauma. There, you have that as well. Emotion is one of the most common ways to which trauma manifests. You have some common emotional symptoms such as denial, anger, sadness, and emotional outbursts. I remember as far as emotional outbursts at work when I was working. I work in a mental institution, and sometimes, one first time happened, they made this big outburst, and you about to, tear your pants up and stuff because you're like, what is going on? So, you have to be, and they were just letting out what they needed to let out at that time. But the part of it and the people that was surrounded that, it definitely affected us, and that it caused your heart to like stop beating for a second, because, it was just so sudden. And like victims, sometimes they, with the overwhelming emotions that they experience, sometimes they kind of go towards other sources, such as friends of close friends of the family or family members. And this is one reason why trauma is difficult for loved ones as well, because sometimes when our somebody you may know, our loved ones may be going through a traumatic experience, and if you try to help them, then they push you away. But understand, the fact of the matter is that the emotional symptoms that come after a traumatic event is very difficult to deal with. So being that you know that, now that you know that sometimes you have to have some patience with them, and long suffering as well. And the most thing is to let them know that, hey, I'm here for you. No matter what, I have your back. I got your back. So however long it takes, whenever you're ready to talk and you're ready to speak, then I'm right here. Because sometimes we're so ready just to just get in the Kool-Aid and know everybody's business, but give them that time. Give them that time that when they're ready to talk or speak, they will. But just like, tell me what's going on. No, they will let you know when they're ready to tell you. Otherwise, sometimes don't even ask. Just tell them and let them know, whatever you're going through, I'm here for you and I'll be here for you. And whenever you're ready to talk about it, I will be here to listen. I will be that listening ear, or I'll be that shoulder to cry on. Okay, and then next you have the symptoms of the physical symptoms of trauma. But sometimes trauma often manifests physically as well as emotionally. Some of the common signs of trauma is lethargicness, fatigue, poor concentration, and a racing heart. Sometimes the victim may have anxiety or panic attacks, and not be able to cope with certain situations or circumstances. But the physical symptoms of trauma can be as real and alarming as those of physical injury, and should be cared for, taken care of, and managed in such a way to alleviate some of that traumatic situation that they're dealing with. Now, there also you have they have some certain symptoms or whatever of stress disorder, and they are there are some people that have nightmares, insomnia, flashbacks. Some people have guilt, poor judgment, lack of feeling. All of these things, poor self-esteem, negative self-image. No matter how nice you look or whatever, you will have. You still sometimes you think, oh, I'm the ugliest person in the world. It's a poor self-image. You don't look at yourself as much, or not that you're worth much. But I'm here to tell you that you're worth it all. You are worth your weight in gold. No matter if nobody never tell you that you look good. Tell yourself that you look good. Don't worry about it. And sometimes we are so concerned about how other people sees us, or how they feel. It doesn't even matter at the end of the day, because those people have nothing to give you. If they don't have good, encouraging words, don't even listen to anything else. Then you have irritability. Then there's frustration, physical pains. Then you have mistrust. Then from there, the physical pains come, the arthritis. These things manifest into certain things. Ulcers. It's just like if somebody in the spiritual realm, somebody did something to you and you don't want to forgive them or whatever, and they're asking you for forgiveness or whatever, but still in all, you don't want to come to that agreement or whatever. So sometimes hating somebody, because that usually after a while that turns to something really, you start to feel ill of the person, you start despising them, you start disliking them, and before you know it, there's hate, there's something that's growing in your heart, and it starts to manifest in your physical body. But we have to learn how to let those things go and let God take care of whatever he needs to take care of, because he can do it better than us. Whoever wronged you or did you wrong, or you are holding forgiveness, even against our abusers, we have to release it unto God and let it go, because he can handle it better than we can. Then also some symptoms are, poor. Sometimes you can't concentrate, short-term memory loss. Have you been there? Again, all effects of trauma can take place either in a short period of time or over the course of weeks or even years. Sometimes it doesn't manifest right away. Some things could have happened to me in childhood, and because they were so traumatic, I forgot about them. But now I find myself, little pieces are coming together, like pieces of the puzzles are fitting together. But sometimes things happen so much, and that's kind of like I used to do. It's like not knowingly pushing things to the back quarters of my mind because they were just too much to deal with. Was like an overdrive, so it was just too much, an overload. I couldn't deal with them at the time, so unconsciously they just will just push back. But now they're coming back to the forefront so that you can be dealt with. And sometimes you got to ask God to show me things that I will know what's going on, that I may be able to pray for whatever that I need to pray for, so that I can get that breakthrough and deliverance that I need in my emotions, so that I can be whole and so I can be free. Now, any effects of trauma should be addressed immediately to prevent permanent things to happen for the permanence. Meaning, the sooner the trauma is dealt with or addressed, the better the chance that the victim have of recovering successfully and fully. Because you cannot, it's worse when you just half the way. Just like about a half-baked cake is half. It's not done all the way. So you want to be totally and fully healed in this season. Short-term and long-term effects of trauma can be similar, but long-term effects are generally more severe. Short-term mood changes are fairly normal, like a normal trauma. But if it shifts in mood swings and it lasts longer than a few weeks, a long-term effect can occur. So we have to be very careful, because we can slip into depression, then the PTSD or whatever, and then we have a bigger problem to deal with. If you're dealing with any kind of trauma, know that all trauma does not require medication, but it can be a useful tool in treating your symptoms, like I said, anxiety and depression. And however, it is important to, and it's very important as well, if you're dealing with trauma, to work with a healthcare professional to determine what kind of medication that is necessary. There is healing for trauma. Trauma symptoms typically last for a few days to a few months, gradually fading as you process. But the unsettling event. But when you're feeling better, you may be troubled from time to time. However, by painful memories or emotions, because sometimes even now you may have things of my past that happen. Sometimes they come back, like I said, to haunt you. But if you know how to maneuver around that and navigate around those things, such as anniversary dates of the time that you got married or whatever, those things could also be trauma to you. They could be traumatic. Okay, while emotional trauma is a normal response to a disturbing event, it could become, like I said, the PTSD, when your nervous system just shut down completely. It gets stuck and you remain in psychological shock. It's just like the veterans, they used to call it one time shell shock. When the guys went out to war and they came back, they were shell shocked. They were just stuck in one place because they could not process their emotions. Facing your trauma is not easy. That's why it feels like sometimes you don't want to deal with it. You're in avoidance to it because you don't want to deal with that stuff, because it's too many memories that you try to forget. But sometimes avoidance is not good, because it only allows the grip of trauma to grab tighter and not to let you go. Sometimes we don't want to deal with stuff, but sometimes we need to try to maneuver through it so that we can be healed and fully healed for real. There are some tips from trauma recovery. Do some exercising. Don't isolate yourself. Be with people that like face-to-face people. Right now, you can't do face-to-face because you have to social distance yourself. But be there and so that you can be open to healing. And sometimes our comfort comes from things that when we are feeling engaged. we feel more that we are part of something when we're engaged in it. So you be able to talk to people, and those people that who are going to build you up, and not people that is going to bring you down and talk to you or talk behind your back. You don't need that, because that's very negative. You need positive people in your life at this point. And then you should also be able to join support groups and of that nature as well. And, did you do the breathing, and then their sensory output, you stay grounded. Acknowledge your feelings, take care of your health, or get plenty of sleep, avoid alcohol and drugs and all of that, stuff like that. And then when you do that, because you know that if those traumas are not taken care of, you're gonna be in a lot of problems, and you're gonna have a lot of trouble. So you don't want to deal with that. Now let's deal with the triggers for the last couple of minutes that I have. It can happen anytime or anywhere. You can see it or hear it. Something that instantly transports you. You ever been to a place where it's like deja vu, like I've been here before. You can't control the emotional or physical reaction that you're experiencing, but it's like you've been there before. You begin to panic. Sometimes if it was a really bad experience, you begin to panic and become into a tailspin. It's like, oh my goodness. And before you know it, it's because you don't know how to deal with it, so you get all antsy, you just be all jacked up. So guess what? You have just been triggered. Certain things they trigger you. Of an event, they trigger you. The trauma brings the event that triggers you, or the event brings the trauma that triggers you. What is a trigger? A trigger is something that elicits a reaction from us when we emotionally or even physically re-experience something that happened in our lives, or that things that take us back in the time, and it causes us to feel distressed and like we were just like reliving it all over again. As for domestic violence survivors, this may mean that we may have to avoid some people, some places, and things that remind us of our abusers. Triggers are a serious issue, because sometimes some things set off our memory, and it can result in debilitating effects. It can crush the survivor emotionally, mentally, and even exact levels of intensity of the original event. Please know that you are not alone. Sometimes we do have things that trigger us. There are internal triggers, which are the feelings, the thoughts, and our memories. And then you have the external, which are situations, people, places, and things. External, like I said before, triggers from a baby. You can get triggers from a baby. You can get triggers from babies crying and screaming, from a backfiring of a car, to a smell. Triggers, they vary. Triggers produce a flashback, which is a memory of the original traumatic event. A trigger will be anything that reminds you of the trauma. Again, a trigger will be anything that reminds you of a trauma. Sometimes you could be going down the street and you see somebody look like somebody like, and if that person was really bad or whatever to you, whatever, you remember like, oh my God, and it brings back some kind of memories about it. And it's also associated, triggers are also associated with our five senses: smelling, tasting, hearing, seeing, and touching. Sometimes something you may have eaten and it's like, oh my, there are things like triggers me, like broccoli triggers me because I had a really bad reaction to broccoli that I felt like I was going to die because of the pain that was in my stomach or whatever. I couldn't even say the word out. I just said the B word, because broccoli or whatever, because I couldn't even say the word because just thinking of the trauma that I went through and the pain that I went through with that. Then you have people shouting in anger, and I hate the shouting and stuff like that, because that always reminded me, because my husband was like to shout and scream in anger. And then you have, like I said, siren, a song. Then you have places. A certain place can trigger you also. A dark room, a dark place, a basement, a dark alley, the actual area of places that you could have been in. Just like in a rape place, when I was raped, there, what reminded me was a dark woods. It was a two, what you call it, a two-door car. So you can't get me to go into a two-door car because that's going to remind me, that's going to trigger the event of that traumatic experience that I've gone through, that I went through. So there are different triggers and stuff like that. But remember, as I come to an end, you will always regain our freedom and our strength, so that we may learn how to identify and deal with our triggers, so that we may deal with any situation that comes our way, as we navigate and continue on our healing journeys. And remember this as well: when you can't control what's happening, challenge yourself to control the way you respond to what is happening. That's where your power is, by controlling the way you respond. Lastly, your mind is your private sanctuary. Do not allow the negative beliefs of others to occupy it. And again, you are not alone. When you can tell your story and it doesn't make you cry, you know that you have been healed. Never be ashamed of a scar. It simply means that you are stronger than whatever tried to hurt you. God bless you. Good night, and see you, God's will, the next time. I am on every second and fourth Tuesday of the month. God bless you. Blessings, everyone. Good night.